The first night I realized the town wasn't empty, it was waiting. I took the job more from exhaustion than ambition, a short contract as night watchman in a place called Hollowbridge, a name soft enough to swallow sound. The recruitment flyer had a grainy photo, an empty main street, shuttered storefronts, and scrawled in bold red type, the sentence that later felt less like advertising and more like warning. I worked as a police officer in a ghost town. The station was a small brick box with a single barred window and a brass bell that didn't ring. Inside, the air smelled of dust and something sharper, copper and old smoke. I set my bag down, tested the radio, and laughed at the echo of my own words. Echoes are harmless. Silence, I would learn, is not. At dusk, the town altered. Shadows pulled long between buildings. Street lamps blinked on with a hesitant pulse. Porches seemed to lean inward, listening. On my first patrol, I found doors ajar, curtains trembling though the air was still, and a trail of faded footprints leading away from the diner. They stopped at the square where the fountain, dry and cracked, held a dark ring that stained the stone. Sounds arrived like questions. A piano somewhere played a single sour note that settled under my ribs. Dogs howled once and then were silent, as if someone had hushed them. When I called into the night, my voice returned with a delay, warped and thin, as if the town were answering on its own terms. For hours, I told myself this was nerves, the brain inventing menace in a place made for forgetting. The first truly wrong thing was the light in the station window. From the street, a pale glow rested on the glass, not the warm yellow of a bulb, but a pinched, distant light that made the badge on my jacket look like an upturned coin. I had not switched it on. I stepped outside. The air tasted faintly of iron and wet stone, though the sky offered no rain. Across the road, a figure stood beneath the lamp, a uniform, a cap. The face should have been ordinary. Instead, the eyes were two small hollows of light that watched me with an indifference that felt like accusation. I should have left that night. That thought arrived like a small, sensible animal, skittering, and I watched it die under the street lamps. Something in me wanted to map the place, to prove there was an explanation. A prank, a wiring fault, an old man with a flashlight and a taste for theatrics. Pride kept my feet. Curiosity kept my hands on the radio. Fear, I learned later, kept me awake. When I crossed the street, the uniform was gone. No footprints marked the pavement, only the ring around the fountain, like a wound that would not heal. The lamp over the figure buzzed a soft bell tone, and then the sound folded into the whispering of the buildings themselves. They seemed to breathe, shutters inhaling, chimneys exhaling, and the hair along my arms raised in time. I walked the avenues with my torch slicing the dark. The houses leaned toward me as if expecting a verdict. Inside the parlors, rugs lay in careful disrepair, glasses on tables swept with dust, but aligned as if someone had just set them down. In a kitchen, a kettle hissed though no flame touched it. When I opened the station door again, the radio sputtered alive with a voice that I did not recognize, and then with my own voice, older, recorded and distant, reading a log entry I had never written. At first I blamed coincidence. The town was full of things that looked like memories. A child's shoe on a step felt as familiar as an old regret. A newspaper on the sidewalk bore a headline dated decades back, yet the photograph beside it showed me standing on that same square, younger but unmistakable, the curve of my jaw, the scar at my brow I'd kept hidden my whole life. My hands trembled turning the page. The date was wrong. The name under the caption was mine. That image opened a small, cold closet of thoughts. I remembered flashes that made no timeline sense. A boy running from rain, a siren wailing in the distance not from this town, a uniform buttoning itself on a night like this. Memories bled into the streets until I could not tell which came from my life and which the town was insisting I had borrowed. The radio answered my questions with static that shaped into syllables. Come back, stay, don't go. Then the threats stopped being hints and became proximity. Footsteps matched mine from behind, always 1 or 2 paces slower, never touching. Doors I had left open were closed when I returned, not quite latched, as if someone had tried and given up. I found notes tucked into my coat, slivers of paper with handwriting that looped like the town's shadows, phrases I did not remember writing. We remember you. We are waiting. The lamp over the fountain guttered and went out. In the sudden well of black, I felt more than saw the figure at my shoulder. It smelled like rain and iron, like the station window's glow made flesh. When it spoke, it did not use lips. The sound was the scrape of a ledger closing, a long exhale that tasted of ink. "You knew us," it said. "You always do." The voice didn't need to form words for me to understand the accusation. It filled my bones with the certainty of a verdict long written. I turned and saw not one figure but many, silhouettes pooling in the street like oil, each uniformed shape a page torn from my life. Younger, older, smiling, blank-eyed, all wearing my face in different years I had not lived yet, and some I no longer remembered. Their eyes were the same pinprick lights, patient as dusk. I ran because running felt like an answer. My feet struck the cobbles, and the town answered with a chorus of small betrayals. A shutter banged open and shut as I passed. A child's laughter threaded itself through a ventilation grate and then snapped off. My radio flashed with call signs that were mine and not mine. My own name echoed back, layered and wrong. The fountain's dark ring glowed faintly, as if something below were stirring and reading my shoes like scripture. I reached the station and fumbled for the bell. My fingers found only empty wood where metal once sat. The bell had become a hand that would not ring. Inside, the office was rearranged in increments of denial. My coat hung where another's should have been. Papers I had signed lay scattered with additional names I could not place, and dates that hadn't occurred. On the desk, a ledger opened itself to a page already inked with my signature and the word "closed" stamped across the margin. The smell changed then, sharpening into the smell of hot metal and old blood. The air pressed against my throat as if to remind me that breath is borrowed. I backed toward the door, and the town pushed with me, a pressure in the hallway like 1,000 small hands. Voices too many to separate stitched a sentence I felt rather than heard. "You left a job undone." I thought of simple exits, a highway, the next town over, a phone call to someone who would anchor me to a life that still had heat. Each option evaporated under inspection. The highway signs pointed inward, the phone's battery drained at a glance. When I stepped outside, the street I knew had become a loop of the same 3 houses and the same fallen lamppost. I kept walking, and always found myself where I had started. The town had learned my roads and folded them like a map into itself. The final thing that convinced me was not a sight, but a touch. Something took my badge from my chest, as if it were a coin to be examined, cool, familiar, and suddenly foreign in my palms. The metal was warm, beating with a faint pulse that matched nothing in my wrist. The faces around me leaned closer, not to see me, they already had, but to be seen by me. For a dizzy instant, I understood the cruel arithmetic. A town of memories needs bodies to hold them. Ghosts need witnesses. I tried to write my confession in the ledger, to leave a mark that was mine alone. My hand wrote in a script that was both mine and not. Details mirrored back at me, corrections scribbled by an invisible hand. The final line that filled the page was not what I had intended, but what they required. Homecoming complete. They closed the door behind me.
Subscribe to Horror Story Bar.